Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dragonmount. I'm Thom, and today I am beyond excited to introduce my very special guest, TJ Weirdo Klune, as he dubbed himself in this book. He's the type of author who will create a socially awkward appliance and turn it into a main character. He's the mastermind behind heartwarming and imaginative stories like The House on the Cerulean Sea, Under the Whispering Door, and The Lightning Struck Heart. His work blends beautiful fantasy and humor, deeply emotional themes, and creates unforgettable characters, obviously. We're going to be talking about inspirations, magical storytelling, and maybe we can get a sneak peek on what might be coming next. So without further ado, and with no more fluff, let me bring in our fantastic guest, TJ Klune.
Look, here comes an awesome guest.
You like it?
That is amazing. I have never felt so welcome to anything in my life.
Yay! That's what we're shooting for. That's what we're shooting for here on Dragon.
Best. I have often wished in my life that whenever I enter a room, a theme song would play.
Yes. You got the horns and everything.
Exactly. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. I had a ton of fun reading The Skin Beneath My Bones. It was absolutely fantastic. I had our little image here so everyone can see. I love the simplicity of the cover art. It's so great, and you kind of have like a theme. Like a lot of your cover art is it's kind of themed and looks very similar. But I absolutely love it. Do you work?
Yeah,
with
that's
the
all
artist
done
directly,
by.
or?
Yeah, that's all done by Chris Sickles, who works under Red Nose Studios. And what's so amazing about all of those covers is that those aren't digital. He hand built every single thing you see on those covers, from the sky, like in The House in the Cerulean Sea, the sky, the ocean, that's all practical. It's not Photoshop, nothing's added in. He builds these amazing sets and then takes photographs with them. And I'll be honest, The House in the Cerulean Sea, that wasn't going to be the original cover. The original cover was something else differently, but the publisher felt it was too dark for what the book was supposed to be. So we went with Chris, who is one of the greatest cover artists, if not the greatest that I've ever worked with. I mean, his imagination is absolutely extraordinary. So much so, you see that the tea shop on Under the Whispering Door, I have that tea shop sitting over on my desk. He gifted that to me after the book came out. And when you press a button on the bottom floor, the fourth floor where the door is lights up. And he's one of the most talented individuals. It's like he can go into my brain and take the exact image that I'm looking for. The bones beneath my skin image, when you read the book, you will know that scene is one of the most, if not the most important scenes in the entire book. And he nailed it perfectly, absolutely perfectly. There's a whimsy to his work, but there can also be a bit of darkness to the work too, because when you look at these covers, they don't have people on them.
No,
they have little hints about what could be going on. The House in the Cerulean Sea has the trees blowing back. In the Lives of Puppets has the overturned chair in the front. Under the Whispering Door has the little moped that's sitting right out front. And it's all these little details that he adds, because the little details make the big story. And that's how I always think when I'm writing.
Apparently we have another guest coming to join us. Sorry. He wants to come and hang out with us. This is Luna.
That's totally fine. My dog is laying right here waiting for me, so I totally understand.
Perfect. Yeah, I did see in the back of your book you do have the image with your puppers there. What's their name?
His name is Hendrix, and I decided when the House in the Cerulean Sea came out, they were like, what do you want to use for an author photo? And I said, can I use the picture of me and my dog at Christmas in my ugly Christmas sweater? And they said, sure. And I said, okay. And so we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to confirm, just so people don't think I was calling you names, you did sign this book as TJ Weirdo Klune.
Yeah, and there's a very good reason for that. And if it's okay, I'd like to just bring that up
absolutely.
real quick.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
This book was originally independently published or self-published in 2018. This is before I had signed with Tor, and I had been with an independent publisher before that. That had published most of my books. And so when I wrote The Bones Beneath My Skin, I sent it in to this publisher, and they said, sure, we can't wait to publish it. And then I got a message that was not meant for me. It was meant for my editor, but somehow I got CC'd on this message, and they said, here's a new book from TJ Klune. This one is weird, even for him. And I said, so look, when I was a kid, the word weird was used as a pejorative to describe me, on top of homophobia, on top of, random other bigotry, on top of my undiagnosed ADHD that made me too loud and unable to stop moving. People who should have known better use that word to describe me. Parents, grandparents, teachers, all of that. And that weird, that became like, again, a pejorative in my head because it was meant to be a pejorative. But as I've gotten older, I realized that my weirdness makes me cool. It's a good part of me. It makes me different. It makes me think differently. I mean, hell, as you mentioned previously, what kind of person thinks, oh, here's a Roomba vacuum cleaner, let's make him a major character in a book and give him social anxiety? And that is how Rambo came to be in The Lives of Puppets. And that word weird really stuck out with me because maybe the original publisher didn't intend for it to be a pejorative, but it hit me like one. Is this book weird? Sure. Sure. Why not? It can say weird. I like weird. But when I saw that word from them, I realized that maybe they didn't have my best interests in mind. Even though I had been with them since 2011, even though I had published a bunch of books with them, it still felt like they were slighting me somehow, that they were using the same words to denigrate me that many other people had used in my past. So what did I do? I pulled that book from that publisher, self-published it on my own, and then Tor came knocking a little bit later and said, hey, we want to republish this along with some of your other works. And I said, hell yeah. Why? Because Tor has never, ever made me feel lesser about myself. Nobody should ever be made to feel lesser about themselves, even in words that you're not supposed to see, like Absolutely. I wasn't. So yeah, I'm weird. This book is weird, and I'm very happy that it is.
I fully agree.
You got to stand up for yourself in this industry. You have to, because the only people that are really going to have your back is yourself, and you have to speak up for yourself. You have to. Absolutely.
Like, I mean, and that's true for all aspects of life, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to, and it may be hard, and it may be awkward, and it may be out. Me too. I am, because again, nobody else was going to do it but me. So why not do it?
And I will say this book, I would add a little bit onto that. I would say this book is delightfly weird.
I adore these characters.
They're so great. Like all the characters have their own nuances that make them a lot of fun. One of the questions I had for you, and we can get right to that, is are you the type of author, do you put yourself in all of the characters? Or is there any particular character in this book that you identify with more than the others?
I think it would be disingenuous to say that I don't put pieces of myself in characters, because I think every author does that, because it's what we know. But I don't want to sound like I get so high on my own supply that I'm like, I'm going to make this character like me, and this other person's going to be this facet of me and stuff like that. I want to make them real. I want to make, even though that they're fictional, I want them to seem like real people. And even if they're mired in the fantastical, I still want them to seem realistic, to make realistic, sometimes stupid decisions. But the character that is probably the most me is Artemis Darth Vader. You know, there is something there is something, you know, weird about her. There's something, you know, she's curious. She is this child who is more than she appears. And I think especially for queer kids growing up, like when I did in the 80s and 90s, we didn't get to be more than we appeared. We were as we appear, and that was who you were. And if you acted slightly effeminate, or if you did this or if you did that, that was going to be who you were for the rest of your, you know, the rest of your young years. And it's just this little girl, this character of Artemis Darth Vader, has a curiosity about the world that, you know, is important to her character arc. And there's a reason for that. But also, I just find it fascinating how little things can bring joy. I mentioned earlier, it's the little details and little things like that. But in this book, it's not a spoiler or anything like that. She has a fascination with bacon. She has a fascination with Louis L'Amour Westerns. She has a fascination with all these little details about humanity. And that's how I am too. I'm going to say this as clearly and bluntly as I can. I don't like people. I like humanity. Humanity gave us books and movies and art and paintings and photography and dancing and all this wonderful thing. People just suck. So true. That's what I wanted to focus on. This was, yes, the specificity of these three main characters, these three people, but also just the idea that humanity is this beautiful, wonderful, brutal, and ugly thing. And we have to understand that we all encompass that all in ourselves. We can all be beautiful. We can all be cruel. We can all be ugly in the things that we do or the things that we say or how we perceive others. And I love her curiosity, because even now I'm 42 years old, I still have this huge curiosity about the world. I love learning about things that I didn't know before. My ADHD will sometimes make me spend 4 or 5 hours on Wikipedia, clicking through link after link after link until I'm completely far away from where I started, just because I'm fascinated by things. I love learning. And that's why I think Artemis Darth Vader is that way, is because I see the world as a curious thing.
And you sum, I think, again, without spoilers, I think you sum that up pretty great throughout the whole story, but particularly in the last couple of pages of this book was beautifully written, at the very least, to sum that up in one of the particular characters' own mind there. It was pretty great. Mm-hmm. So exactly. This book is, I would say more of like, modern urban science fiction. Is there anything that drew you specifically to fantasy and science fiction, or?
That's what I read growing up. And horror. Horror is my favorite genre of all time, and I read constantly in horror. But science fiction and fantasy, when I was a kid, again, I grew up in rural Oregon in the 80s and 90s in a home that was not loving. And so what do you do when you live in a small town in the middle of nowhere? You have to decide how you spend your days. And my days were spent, especially during the summer, at the library. I read at the Douglas County Library. That was my safe haven. That was my safe place. I read anything and everything I could get my hands on, fiction, nonfiction. Even if the books were far too advanced for me, I still tried to read them because I wanted to learn how to read better. And for some reason, though, science fiction and fantasy has always felt like home, because you can take stories about the real world and put them through a lens of fantasy and go about it in a different way. When I'm writing books like The House in the Cerulean Sea or Under the Whispering Door, In the Lives of Puppets, I don't have to worry about things like homophobia. I don't have to worry about things, because if I don't want to put that in the book, it doesn't need to be in the book. A fantasy world, a book without homophobia involving queer characters could almost be a fantasy in of itself, because we deal with homophobia, on a daily basis. But this book, I wanted it to be grounded in reality while still having the speculative elements surrounding it. Not necessarily as window dressing, but to the point where the first quarter of the book, that's not the important thing. The important thing was to build this world, to build this setting, and then to take it all away from everyone.
Yeah. That's and that is a theme throughout for sure. The kind of the establishing a home and a feeling of safety, especially with this the trope of, and I don't use the word trope as a pejorative because I really enjoy the idea of the found family type story, and many of your stories kind of go in that direction. So is there?
It's important.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, it's important for me that people understand that, found family is considered a trope these days, and tropes are tropes for a reason. It's because some of them work really well, some of them don't, but whatever. But found family, I think it's important for your listeners to understand. Found family is a very real thing for queer people. We made that. That was what we did, because a lot of us did not get the love and support that we needed growing up at our homes, myself included. So we had to go out and make families of our own for people who like us for who we are and don't hate us for things that we're not. And it's to have that, to show that people from different walks of life can come together and love and support each other without being related by blood. That to me is one of the most important things, because for so many of us, we didn't get to have that. We had to go out and make our own families. I did that. My family of people who were related to me by blood count as my brother and my sister. Everybody else is not related to us by blood, but that is our family because we made that ourselves. We took the better people in the world and surrounded ourselves with them, as opposed to the hate and the anger and the vitriol that we grew up with. And that's a real thing for so many people. So when you see the trope of found family being marketed or advertised, just remember it came from a real place for so many people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, myself included, and many of our community there as well. I mean, the majority of my own wedding was filled with people that I met throughout the Wheel of Time community, for instance.
Exactly, and those are just as valid as other families that are related by blood, that have all the people who came from each other. It's absolutely just as valid.
Yes. You didn't have a choice, the one that you were born into, but the found family or your chosen family are often much more closer and hold much more deeper connections. And that is definitely evident, like that you have that personal experience when you read your books, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's important to show that. I think it's important to show that you don't have to be just who you came from.
Exactly. You mentioned being in the library and reading books. Is there any particular author or book that you can think of that maybe, I hesitate to use the word like influenced you, or that, but something that you can think of that you latched on early on to?
Stephen King. like many people of my era, you probably in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you probably grew up reading Stephen King at far too young an age. Yep. And that was me. I read the very first Stephen King book I read was The Stand, the complete and uncut edition, at age 11. Okay. I did not understand half the book, maybe three. Oh, so let's be generous, 3/4 of the book. But all I knew was that I was enthralled. I did not know that books could be like that. And so, of course, I consume everything that he's ever written and still do. Like to this day, a Stephen King book comes out, that's my day off, because I'm reading all day, every day. And but then beyond that, you went to Terry Pratchett, you went to Douglas Adams. You went to Toni Morrison. You went to all of these wonderful Octavia Butler, all these wonderful authors who have shaped and grown. But there is one book that probably shaped me more than others. The very first person I came out to was my librarian, and she said, "Here is a gay book. Here is a book with gay people in it." She gave it to me. Now, have you heard of a book called The Frontrunner by Patricia Nell Warren?
No, I have not.
This was it has a legacy. It was written in the 70s by a straight white woman. It was the first critically and commercially successful gay novel. and it was about
I'm sure that's how it was
a
marketed
runner.
too.
Right. It was, and the original 70s cover was very salacious. It was a nude man with a towel around his waist in a locker room with a younger man sitting just as nude on the bench beside him. But the whole book was about a guy named Harlan, who was a collegiate coach, training a runner named Billy for the Olympics. And it showed their love story as they fall in love and come together. And it was there's sex in it. There's grittiness to it. And keep in mind, this is the 70s that this book was written. Yeah. So how does the book end? Billy gets assassinated at the Olympics while he's running, murdered, and that's the end of the book. And
of course.
Years later, my first book comes out in 2011. I get a message from one Patricia Nell Warren saying, I read your book and I enjoyed it. And so, of course, me not having any cool whatsoever, immediately fangirled all over Patricia Nell Warren, saying, you don't understand. Your book, The Front Runner, was the first gay book I ever read when I was a kid. And I will never forget her response. She wrote back, I am so sorry. And I was... Now, to be fair to Miss Warren, she knew how that book had an effect on gay men specifically. So she wrote 2 sequels to that followed the aftermath and gave the character some semblance of peace. But Miss Warren has since passed, but I will never forget just how wonderful it was to be her friend in the last part of her life. I have a first edition signed copy of The Front Runner on my bookshelf because of her. And I am here because of her, even though her book ended in tragedy. And that was the first gay book I got to read. It influenced me because I don't want to write gay tragedy. I want to write books where queer people, whatever road they have to go on, it may be rocky, it may be bumpy, and bad things may happen, but they will get to have happiness and love and joy and success, just like other characters get to have.
It's almost like representation matters a little bit.
Oh, a little bit, don't you think? Yeah,
it's
very strange. It's very strange. It's like now publishers are finally catching up, going, wow, people buy books about gay people? What? Let's do this.
I wish they would just have listened prior to. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
better late than never, I think.
Yes, always, yes. So the idea of again, like I hesitate to use the found family trope, but is there in the house in the Cerulean Sea and in Under the Whispering Door, there's that those 2 books have resonated with so many readers. Is there anything that has been like surprising or like feedback or a quote that has come to you in a signing or online or however that you've gotten from fans of those books?
So The House in the Cerulean Sea appealed to, I have never, ever considered myself to be a children's author, ever. None of my books had ever been for children, ever. And I remember deep in the pandemic, after The House in the Cerulean Sea came out, one time I got a direct message on social media, and I never check direct messages because sometimes they're filled with things that I don't want to see. Yeah, and but I don't know why I clicked on this one, but I did. I was randomly just trying to click away, I think, and I accidentally opened the message. And there's a brackets at the top in this message, and it was from 2 dads, a couple, and they said, our 7-year-old son read The House in the Cerulean Sea with us, and he wants to talk to you about it. And I said, okay, let's see what's going on. What followed was this huge block of text, a stream of consciousness from this 7-year-old boy that was basically a book report on my book. He told me the things that he liked. He told me the things he didn't like. He told me his favorite characters. He told me everything about, the book. And then the tenor of this conversation changed because he said that this book, that given the pandemic, he had not been allowed to see his friends, and that made him very sad. And that this book made him feel like he had friends again. Oh. he ended it by saying, "Would you like to see my Chauncey costume?"
Oh my God.
And I,
of course.
forgetting that I was speaking to a child, I said, "Fuck yeah, I want to see your Chauncey costume." And then I went, "Oh shit, I'm so sorry."
Son of a
But then
bitch.
the dad was totally cool. It was fine. But
Yeah.
and he uploaded this picture, and let me tell you, man, this 7-year-old kid in this picture was wearing a full green spandex bodysuit. He had attached suction cups to his arms. On his head, he had taken paper towel rollers for the stalks for the eyes, and he had put 2 golf balls on the top, and in the middle of his head was a bellhop cap.
Oh,
It was that moment in time that I thought to myself, am I a goddamn children's author? What is this? And so the House in the Cerulean Sea has opened up to so many readers of all ages. I get emails from people in the House in the Cerulean Sea saying, "I'm probably not who you wrote this book for. I am an 87-year-old straight white grandmother." But the thing is, I write my books with queer people in mind, but I write my books for everyone who wants to read them. For Under the Whispering Door, that book was written after the death of my partner. It was unexpected. It came out of nowhere. I had proposed to him 6 weeks before, and then one day in our home, he collapsed. And what followed was 3 years of my partner in and out of hospitals, paralyzed from the neck down because of a surgery that had gone wrong. And after he passed, I was this toxic, hateful person. I was angry at the world. And I thought I saw all these people going on with their lives and happiness and joy. And I thought, why can't that be me? I was mad at myself. I was mad at our friends, our family. I was mad at Eric because how dare he leave like that? And so I knew that if I continued on the way that I was, that toxicity would become absolute. So I had to make a choice. Either I fight my way through it or I let it consume me. And the way that I process things is through writing. So I wrote Under the Whispering Door to understand grief, to understand why I felt the way I felt, to understand why everybody in the world at one point in their life, if you know what love is, you will know loss at some point in your life. But why do no two people experience grief the same way? Why is it so unique when it's still universal? So I wanted to explore that. And obviously I didn't get the answers that I was looking for, but by the time I finished that book, I felt a sense of peace that I had not felt in a very long time. And that book specifically has meant more to people than I even expected. I get messages all the time after people have read that book, sharing their stories of grief. And I wondered why people felt like they could share that with me. And then I realized I liken it to therapy in a way, even though I'm nowhere near qualified to be anybody's therapist. And I do not give out therapeutic advice in any way, shape, or form. But it's easier to tell a stranger something hard than it is to tell someone you love, because that stranger, you don't know them. You don't know what they think. You don't know if they judge you. And especially in therapy, that's what it's there for. So it's so much easier to tell people that you don't know something that hurts, something that's hard. So I have become like this secret keeper for all of these messages, for all of these tales of grief. That was something I did not expect, but that is one of the most profound things that has ever happened to me. And I take that responsibility extraordinarily seriously. I do, because these people know exactly what I went through. These people, whether it be a loved one, whether it be the loss of a pet, which can be just as hard as losing a person. So it's important to me that, and especially with grief being such a taboo thing to talk about, we don't like to talk about grief and death because that means bad things are happening. But the more we talk about it, the less mystique it has. After Eric, my entire relationship with death changed. I no longer fear death. I no longer worry about the end. When it happens, it happens. And whatever happens after that, it is what it is. That's the only way that I can go on, is believing that there may be something more than this, and that one day I'll find out that answer.
That's, that's a beautiful thing to have with anyone, really. I mean, being the fact that it's so many fans is fantastic, but That's beautiful. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad
I'm very happy that story exists, even though that was the hardest book I've ever had to write. I'm so happy
I can
that
imagine.
story exists, because other people get to if it helps even one person not through their grief but understand their grief,
Yeah.
then I've done my job. Then I've done what I needed to do.
It's almost like, like you said, it's not like you found the answers when you wrote the book, but it was the journey through it helps you understand. We lost my father-in-law recently, and the idea of grief and sadness doesn't really end. It just changes and becomes manageable, and instead of being a sadness, it becomes just like another feeling throughout the day, a reminder, really.
Yeah, grief doesn't go away. We get bigger around our grief. We grow around it because it's part of us, and maybe it won't hurt as bad as it used to, but every now and then maybe a little piece will chip off or a crack will open to remind you that it's there. I mean, to get a little down, just last week I had to put down my 17-year-old cat. My cat that I've had for 17 years. I've had her since she was a kitten. She came into my life, this little feral little thing. She loved only me. She hated everyone else. And for 17 years, since my 20s through my 30s, through my 40s, or into my 40s, five different homes, 3 different states, she was there. And she let me know it was time to go. And it's still one of the worst things to have to go through. But at the end of the day, that trust that was placed in me as her owner, as her friend, to know when it was time to go, you have to know those things, and you have to be ready for it. And it sucks. It's the worst thing. Of course, I sobbed like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, God.
But at the end of the day, I got to be filled with 17 years of her in my life, and I got to give her the final thing that she needed from me. And I think that that's so important to recognize, even though it's hard.
Yeah. A quote that I think of whenever stuff like this comes up was actually from Andrew Garfield, of all people, the actor who played Spider-Man. Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Yeah. He said in a talk show, actually, his mother passed away, and he said, he was okay with talking about it because the sadness and the grief was just all of the unshown love that he had for that person. So every time that he, when he felt it, he was showing that love for them, and that's a beautiful thing.
And that's such a beautiful way to push it. It's absolutely beautiful to put it that way.
The idea of heartbreak and the beauty of humanity is shown throughout this book as well, throughout the skin beneath my the bones beneath my skin. There's my Lisdexia on top of the ADHD. You're welcome. Is throughout this as well, and especially with Artemis Darth Vader, which is the best name that's ever happened. Every time I
was pretty proud of myself for that.
Definitely bravo, because every time she said it, I laughed. No matter when, no matter when she says it, no matter the circumstances that it's happening, and no matter who she's correcting when she corrects says her name, I laughed every single time. It's absolutely hilarious. So I mean, you talked about going through a lot when writing your books. Like, it's almost like I again hesitate to use the word therapeutic, but it is a process. It's almost cathartic going through writing these books. Is there any part of that process that is that you don't look forward to, or that you do look forward to, or is there any part of that process that's particularly harder than others for you, like just your writing process in general?
Drafting especially because I'm the type of person who, like right now, like the bones beneath my skin, when I wrote that, I probably had a 30,000 word outline for it. I put in things in outlines that don't necessarily go in the book. Like, I'll know a character's birthday. I'll know their favorite food. I know what they dream about. I know this and this and this stuff that doesn't necessarily make it in the book, but grounds me in the world and in the characters. Yeah. That can be a lot, because, I have all of these ideas and I have to put them in a proper order. Now, this outline that I make isn't, a map. It's not set in stone. It's more like a guide. And because again, I have ADHD and I can't do everything in a straight line. That's just not how it works. But that drafting can be hard, because that, when I'm doing all my, before I even start writing the book, I want to make sure as much or all of my research is done, because I don't want to get partway through the book and have to stop because I don't know something that I'm trying to write about. So I try to do everything first. So research in a book can typically take anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9 months. And then when I'm ready to sit down and write the book, I can write the book in 2, 3 months, because I have prepared myself for that moment to get ready to do it. That is the hard part. My favorite part is not writing the story. My favorite part is not finishing the story. My favorite part is editing. When my editor goes in and starts making all the cuts and slashes, I love it. When my editor, her name is Allie, she is one of the best editors. She is the best editor I've ever worked with. She gets me. We have the same sense of humor. We have the same ideals. We have the same ideas of what makes a good story. And I love when she kills my darlings. I love when she says, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. Fix this, fix that. Because look, you can tell me in a note, hey, from an editor, from an agent, you're a good writer. I don't need to hear that, because that's not going to make me a better writer. I want to be better than I was, even the day before. Editing helps me become a better writer. And Allie knows how to do that. My books, when they get to her, they're legible-ish, but then she makes them into something extraordinary. I would not be here. My books would be nowhere near as good without Allie Fisher, my editor. She is the best.
That's having that level of trust with an editor is fantastic. That's great. I mean, because
I've had editors that it didn't work with that well, but now that I'm years into working with Tor, they know how I write, they know how I do, and they know what kind of books I want to put out, and they're like, go ahead. And I'm like, thanks.
That's great. I don't have the exact experience with, obviously with written work. I'm not an author, but I definitely trust my editors here. They make me look good all the time.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's their job. Their job is to make you better than you have any right to be. That's what my editor does for me. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's similar for you, but I'm always asking them, like, what can I do to make your life easier? Like, what is it?
Always.
Is there anything that you notice that I can change? Like, having
right.
that,
and I'll do that. Like certain words, like crutch words that I fall into, like I put just in front of like everything. It's just how I work. It's just a word that I use. But now after working with Allie forever, anytime I get ready to write the word just, I'm like, wait, Allie's probably going to cut this. So I'll just get rid of it right now.
Yep. That's good. Yeah. See, that's growth. That's definitely like a learning curve with somebody. I mean, I have similar things with visual stuff. I used to talk way too fast. So having that part of the writing process is definitely great. And having like the personality to not take it personally with the edits and be happy with them is such a great thing.
Well, you can't. A good editor is there to make the story better. That is their job. And you can't be so precious about your words that you can't be willing to let them go, because I mean, have Allie and I gotten back and forth on things that I think should stay? Absolutely. But 99% of the time she's right. And I remember that. It's very rare that I say we need to keep this because of X, Y, and Z. If she feels that something needs to be cut, chances are she's right, and it does need to be cut. You can't think about how long you spent on this or this or this. I mean, you can, but you can't let it become everything. You can't let it become the point where you don't listen to an editor, because again, a good editor is to make your work better.
We talked about your process of writing, the way you outline things, which is great. Like that long of a process for research is such a great thing to hear. The one thing that comes to mind is, do you have for your characters, when you're doing these researches, writing your background information for your characters, do you have spreadsheets? Is it a handwritten notebook? Like do you have a murder board somewhere? Like, what does it look like?
You know that Well, a lot of it is handwritten, but you know that meme that goes online when it's Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia standing in front of the conspiracy board where he's smoking a cigarette like this and all the strings are attached? That's over there. That is I have a board that is, I put sticky notes up on a board to show me where I'm going and what to do, so I don't have to keep switching back and forth between documents. And once I get to a point, once I get to a point, I take them down. I take down those sticky notes, and I keep. This is a hoarding thing, but I keep all of those sticky notes when I finish with them in a plastic bag. I label it what it is, and I put it away with the other ones that I've done before. But yeah, I have a conspiracy board that makes me look like a lunatic.
That's funny. That's fantastic. And the thing that popped into my mind when you said that is going to be great for, like, in 1,000 years, the future archaeologist that finds your home and is like, why do they have these bags with these people's names written on them and all of this information? Why
does this say antisocial? What is this? Why does this one say antisocial vacuum cleaner? What does that mean?
What is happening? What was wrong with the people of the late 2000s, of the mid or early 2000s?
Right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you have any, like, we see a lot of interesting, like, writing quirks that some authors have. For instance, like one of the more famous ones, George R.R. Martin likes to say that when he gets writer's block, he kills a character. Do you have any kind of interesting ways of dealing with writer's block, or any interesting, or things that maybe other people have told you, like, that's a weird one there, TJ?
Yep, weird. Yeah.
I
can, when I'm writing, I have to, I create playlists for my books. The House in the Cerulean Sea and Somewhere Beyond the Sea have like 500 songs in this playlist. And all I do when I'm writing the books, not when I'm researching, but when I'm writing the books, all I do is listen to that music. When I'm writing, when I'm going out into the world, when I'm doing chores, when I'm walking my dog, when I'm going on trips, all I do is listen to that music, so I stay in that world. And so I do have to say, though, that I'm trying to figure out how to say this without making me sound nuts.
It's okay. You're in a place of love. You're safe.
So I do editing whenever I'm editing a book.
Yeah.
No matter what time of year it is, I have to listen to Christmas music, no matter what.
Okay.
Why?
All right.
Because my very first book I was editing in over Christmas of 2010. And that book came out in 2011, and for some reason did really well. And so now I got it in my head that when I get ready to put out a book, when I'm in editing, I have to have Christmas music play. I have to have Christmas music. So anytime I'm editing, and sometimes edits can take months, it'll be July and I'm listening to freaking Judy Garland sing the saddest Christmas song in the world. This is what I do.
That's okay. So you could be wandering through the grocery store listening to Judy Garland.
Yeah, and it could be March. It could be
wonderful.
anything. Yeah, that's just how I have to do it. I have to listen to Christmas music while editing.
I love it. I absolutely love that. Okay, so this book, obviously heavy science fiction tones. You have that throughout some of the other books as well. One thing I wanted to ask about and this is something that I've seen in multiple science fiction, more of the fun side of science fiction things, is this kind of thing about the grays. If you know what I'm talking about. Yep. I love that. I love that that's like a through line through a lot of like the more, I and again, I don't use this as a pejorative, but the not hard sci-fi things, the things that are a little bit more fun and not, hard science fiction. So for you, where does that come from? Is that like, where did you pull that from?
X-Files. I was the absolute biggest freaking nerd for X-Files. I will tell you. So I wrote a young adult trilogy called The Extraordinaries about superheroes that protect a city. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the main character in that series, his name is Nick. He writes fan fiction about the superheroes that protect his city. Now, when I was writing that book, I wanted to write how a 16-year-old would write, how I used to write when I was 16-year-old, very purpley prose, everything's very flowery, but I didn't want it to make it seem like I was making fun of young writers, because that could come off wrong if it sounds like you're making fun of the person writing fan fiction. So what did I do? I found my old fan fiction from when I was 13 years old, writing about Walter Skinner and Fox Mulder. I was writing slash fan fiction when I was 13 about those two characters. And instead of creating all new fan fiction for the young adult series that I did, I just plagiarized myself. I put my old fan fiction into that book and changed the names from Agent Mulder and Agent in Charge Walter Skinner to the names of the characters in the book. But yeah, that fan fiction that's in the Extraordinary series is my X-Files fan fiction from when I was a kid.
That is amazing.
I was a very weird and horny 13-year-old for Fox Mulder.
That is
so that's where the Greys came from.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. That's so great. Yeah. Oh God, I love that. And I love our tangent on that. It was, where did the Greys come from? Yeah. But we got oh God. But the stories make sense. It's
you have to know. You have to know where it came from.
So great. It's so great. Oh my God. Well. I want to read that book now just for that. Like, I mean, I love the idea but I want to read that book now just so I can, like, I'll skim through looking for that fan fiction.
Yeah, look, the fan fiction is there. The first chapter of the book is fan fiction. It is listed. It is laid out just like Archive of Our Own, the fan fiction site. Look, man, just so I can say this too, so people know. People who shit, I don't write fan fiction now. It's because I have too much work doing what I do. But people who shit upon fan fiction, shut up. Just shut up, man. It is people. It doesn't matter what people are reading as long as they're reading. That is the greatest thing in the world. You can, especially when these fan fiction writers, they can go out and write 200,000 word epics and put them out for free for people to read. Fan fiction writers are some of the hardest working writers in publishing in the world. And I just don't like it when they get shit upon. I do not like that. Do not talk down about people just because they do things a little bit different.
Exactly. And I mean, like, it's all story. It's all stories. Like, just because they didn't make the characters up, like, it's the same as the books. Like, not the same, but you know what I mean? Like,
and two things could come of it. Two things. One, it's a great place for burgeoning writers to not have to worry about world building per se, because the world is already built for them. And two, it's for queer people who don't get to see themselves in anything canon related. So they need to go in and make their own characters or use the characters already there to show that queer people can exist in these stories. I just,
by and large,
I don't understand why the literati turns their nose up at fan fiction when it is just as valid as any other form of literature.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, by and large, you see it's queer folks and BIPOC folks that are writing most of that fan fiction, and there's a reason for that.
Absolutely.
These things. But hopefully, but we're seeing that change in the last 10, 15 years more so. Like, I feel like there was a gradual change in the late 90s, early 2000s, and now it's kind of, the arc is going up more, getting better and better.
Especially in YA. YA has always been at the forefront of diversity, and adult fiction is catching up, however slow the wheels turn. But fantasy and speculative fiction, science fiction, those have always been places for queer people to play.
I love it. Well, I mean, I feel like I could talk to you all day. This was so much fun, but
thank you.
I thank you so much, first of all, for writing this book, because I absolutely loved it. And thank you for hanging out with us. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Always. You're always welcome. And that's all I have for you guys today. TJ was so fun to hang out with. After having spoken with him, you could definitely see his personality bleeding out into his books, and honestly, they're all the more fun because of it. Make sure to pick up Bones Beneath My Skin February 4th, 2025, and then that way you can meet Artemis Darth Vader for yourself. We'll see you next time. Peace.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for sticking around to the end. As always, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button or leave a comment. We like comments, especially positive ones. If you have a friend who enjoys the Wheel of Time, tell them about Dragonmount.com and our show. Special thanks to our show sponsor, Tor Books, as well as to our Patreon supporters. If you want to learn more about how our show is made and get additional insights into the Wheel of Time, you can become a Patreon supporter. We have a lot of big plans for the show, and your contribution will go a long way to making them a reality. Be sure to follow Dragonmount on social media, and see you next time!